All signs point to Kenny Pickett getting the start for the Eagles on Sunday as they look to clinch the NFC East against the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to talk about it next with Zach Berman coming in a little bit. He's got the news from the practice field, but before that, the Professor Deniz here to school us on the PHLY Eagles podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast on a Friday afternoon. Bo Wolf, the Professor, Deniz Selman in studio here as we await the arrival about halfway through the show of Zach Berman, who is checking out practice at the NovaCare Complex as we speak. A big game coming up for the Eagles as they look to clinch the NFC East against the Dallas Cowboys, a Cowboys team that we now know will be without CeeDee Lamb. It should look easy, but, you know, stranger things have happened. Professor, how you doing?
Oh, yeah, far stranger things have happened, and you always have to be prepared for stranger things when you follow the Eagles, I think.
How are the newspaper sales this morning?
I was wondering, so here's the thing. Julia complimented me on the hat, and I knew this was coming. The Paperboy thing was exactly the thing I was expecting too, so I'm a little disappointed that it wasn't something. But the newspaper industry is not doing so well.
Yeah.
So
you've had to get into podcasting.
My route's gotten shorter and shorter.
Extra. We've got playoff scenarios here.
That's right. For the audio listeners, I am wearing a hat that Bo is clearly jealous of. So,
I was thinking it's not quite Oliver Twist, but that is where my head went. But yeah,
I wanted to change it up a little.
Yeah, I think it looks good.
Oh, thank you.
But it's also worth remarking on.
I'm bald, So
well, I wouldn't know anything about that. All right, you want to hop to the playoff scenarios? Should enough foreplay? Let's get to what you're really here for.
Sure. Playoff scenarios. How about that NFC West strength of victory race? I don't know if anyone's following that, but
you seen this? You heard about this?
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, you have it covered. It's an interesting one, but it's. I wish it was a little.
The Rams'
closer.
official website used my tweet to describe the situation, which I was very
proper credit.
Very well. Yeah. I mean, they embedded my tweet in the thing, and they wrote my name in the article. And it just made me think. I mean, all these years that I've been doing this for Eagles playoff scenarios. And the team that I love, has never.
You thinking about changing your allegiances?
No, but I'm just saying. It's not like not going to say anything. The Eagles.
I mean, certainly the Rams have never stolen your bicycle.
that is true. That is true. Maybe they just haven't had enough opportunities.
Yeah.
The Eagles need either a win or a Washington loss to clinch at least the 2 seed.
And that's not matchup specific. Over the last 2 weeks, they need any one of those four things.
Exactly. At any point. So Washington doesn't play until Sunday night, and so when the Eagles take the field, everything will be still possible. And then in terms of staying alive for the 1 seed, Eagles need to win and have both Minnesota and Detroit lose. Minnesota plays at 4:25. Those 2 games got flipped in the schedule early this week, which I think is a good thing. I think it's better to take the field without that being dead, and just in terms of the juice of the game. Vikings could very well lose to Green Bay at 4:25, and then the Eagles would then stay alive for the 1 seed until Monday night when Detroit plays at San Francisco. And then
that Minnesota Green Bay, I know you'll get to it, but a huge game for the Eagles, not just because they want Green Bay to win to knock Minnesota off into the possibility of the 1 seed, but also if Green Bay loses, it sets up a likelihood that Green Bay could be the team coming here.
So people have asked, so right now Washington is 1 game behind Green Bay, and no matter how that if it ends up tied, Washington does have the tiebreaker.
Right.
And so all Washington needs to do is gain a game on Green Bay, and then move up to the 6. This is, of course, assuming the Eagles win the division and are the 2 seed. So if Washington does beat Atlanta, Washington plays Dallas next week.
Mm-hmm.
They would have control over the 6 seed, and then that could lead to Green Bay coming here, which I know is like the big concern that a lot of people have. You have to beat everybody to get to the Super Bowl.
Sure.
Like, I don't know if it's that big a deal, like who you're playing in the wild card round, but yeah, that is a thing. Now, what the Eagles would need the last week to get the 1 seed is a little bit simpler. Just need to win and have Minnesota beat Detroit. So
Right.
you don't need 2 things; you only need 1 thing.
Right.
And people have asked, like, what about the strength of victory thing? Not a factor anymore, because if the Vikings lose to the Packers, the Eagles would have the common opponents tiebreaker over the Vikings. So the earlier strength of victory stuff we were doing with the Vikings is now out the window. Like, it's not going to come down to strength of victory.
Got it.
It's either going to be the Eagles have the tiebreaker because the Vikings lost to Green Bay, or it's just not going to be a tie and the Eagles aren't going to get it. So those are the 2 things. And then there's one scenario in which we would know at the end of this week that the Eagles are playing the Commanders for sure. Like, so not only that the Eagles are locked into the 2, but Washington would be locked into the 7. For that to happen, Tampa Bay would have to lose, Green Bay would have to win, and Washington would have to lose. And then either Detroit winning or the Eagles losing would have to knock the Eagles out of contention for the 1 seed as well. So if those, I guess it's 4 things
not
total.
crazy.
It's not completely crazy, but that is the scenario in which the Eagles would know. More importantly for the Eagles is, do you know if you're playing for anything in that last week, right? So I think there are probably some fans, and actually I'm curious what you think about this, who would rather the 1 seed just be over with so that the team can at least rest. Now, I'm definitely not of that school, because if the 1 seed's still possible, it's not like a crazy long shot.
No,
it's just the Lions losing to the Vikings.
I could see thinking that in the macro, but in this specific scenario, if you get there, it's really not that far-fetched. That is worth playing for.
Right. And so I guess the thing is, like, at the end of the day, like, they would put that Lions-Vikings game on Sunday Night Football for sure the last week.
Mm-hmm.
So the Eagles would have to play for real against the Giants in that situation. And so I guess the scenario that people have in their minds that they don't like is the Eagles play really hard, no one gets any rest, and you don't get the 1 seed anyway, right? Because the Lions end up winning that game.
Right.
And in hindsight, that would be worse than if you just don't have a chance,
right,
and you go into the week thinking of it almost like as a bye week, especially because there won't be another bye week in that scenario.
Yeah, I think in this specific scenario, if you, I mean, the longest shot of those 5 or 4 results is the Lions losing on Monday night to
right, and that's
San
before,
Francisco.
And that's before next week,
and that's before you even
right.
get the planning going, right?
That's
and
true.
So
if that game were the last week, that would be annoying, because then you're like playing with the hope that they lose to San Francisco,
and that would be the one where you might convince yourself it's not really worth it. But if you get that, that's the real long shot. If you get that, then yeah, I mean, absolutely play for it, and hope that Minnesota beats Dallas or Detroit, which is, I mean, what's probably going to be like a 4-point spread, like.
Yeah, that's probably right.
It's in Detroit, right?
It's in Detroit, yeah. But I mean, it's 2 teams with the same record, and yeah, for sure. Gambling odds-wise, 63% chance right now that it's going to be Eagles Commanders. So that's
which surprises me a little
higher
bit
than it was earlier in the week. So like the way the gambling odds are going is like people don't think Washington is going to catch Green Bay.
Do you think they think Atlanta is going to win this week?
Or I think I haven't looked at the line for that specific game, but I think that line might be tighter than perceived.
That line,
you can check that, but. And then it's 24.
It's a 4-point Washington spread. Yeah.
Okay, so 24% that it'll be Green Bay. That's the second highest, and then it gets really low after that. It's 6%. It'll be Tampa Bay. 5% that it'll be the bye, and then of course there's like the doomsday scenarios of falling down to the 6 or the 7.
Right,
are less than 1%.
Okay. Anything else to go over?
Playoff scenario wise?
Yeah.
It's so boring in the AFC. Like things are getting locked in. Like like Denver and the Chargers are likely to possibly going to clinch tomorrow. We'll know the 7 teams. The Chiefs are locked into the 1.
Denver
The Texans are locked into the 4.
If Denver loses both and Cincinnati
they
wins
could,
both.
and they play Cincinnati directly. So that's going to be like a game that has the most juice in the AFC race this week. But yeah, I mean, it's just compared to some of these past. Like I'm always like mentally preparing for making my playoff scenarios chart for week 18. And the AFC chart is likely to be the smallest.
As you look in the mirror, coming out of the shower, you're preparing for it. What goes into that?
Just in my head, I'm always thinking, how many rows is it going to have? How many columns is it going to have this year? And the AFC chart, which in some past years has been like, taken me hours to make sure it was all correct, could really be like a tiny little thing where it's just a matter of who gets the 5 and who gets the 6 or something like that.
And for your lovely wife, is this a known thing that week 18 you're going to be your head is going to be entirely elsewhere? It's
funny. Emily is the kind of person who maybe for her own mental health forgets these things that happen every year. Like every year she seems surprised that
you turn into the
that there's playoffs in January. You know what I mean? Like I think it's better for her mental health and better for our marriage.
This monster
that she
visits
forgets
the household once a year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She jokes about how her mom forgets her dad's jokes, and it's like really good for their marriage because he can tell the same jokes and she laughs every time. And this is kind of the same thing. She's like disappointed every year that there's playoffs in January, and I want to watch all the playoff games and do the playoff scenarios and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's I think it's good.
Okay. All right, let's talk about this Eagles offense under the expectation that it's going to be Kenny Pickett. Now, Nick Sirianni did go as far today as to say during his press conference that it would be a stretch for Jalen Hurts to play in this game. In Nick Sirianni speak, that's about as much of a certainty as you will get, and so it certainly sounds like it will be Kenny Pickett. I know that you obviously crunched the tape on the Kenny Pickett performance against Washington, and I think you were left a little bit wanting from some of the play calling variety. Is that fair to say?
This is something we've discussed in past weeks. So, like when I talk about how the Eagles don't have like they don't seem to be concerned with calling the same exact pass play 4 or 5 times a game
without even just a little bit of sprinkling.
Like I think when I see it, at least, and I would need to like look at the film and like with Fran and ask him about certain elements of it. I think usually the only little bit of differences on those plays comes from the way the defense is aligned. Like to me, it seems like the play call is the same every time. So in this last game, that play where DeVonta Smith caught the short out just before the 56-yard field goal.
Yeah.
They ran that play. That was the first time they ran it. They ran it 3 more times in the second half. And all of them were on late downs. And I looked, and they called that play 4 times in a stretch of 9 late down dropbacks. Okay. Now, to me, that's a little bit too often. And you see Percy Butler and Bobby Wagner like pointing out exactly where their outs are going to go, and they pass it off perfectly. And you know the ball's not going to Jahan Dotson anyway. Jimmy Kempski pointed that out on that one play. And I think
is this the one when they finally do the changeup on the 4th down DeVonta drop, where it looks like DeVonta is going that way, and then he pivots back inside? Or this is a different
No, that's different. Okay. That one was different. And so I think when you look at the one Fran pointed out, you mean, right? Like that was a different. The one that changed off of was a different play. Okay. So yeah, they do wrinkle sometimes. I mean, I would hope you're going to do some wrinkles sometimes. Yeah. But we talk about like I posted this on Twitter and people were like, "Come on, it was the backup quarterback." But we saw
it's my fault. This whole show.
What's going on?
For everybody, pretend that this is the first second of the show. We're just re-beginning. Deniz, I want you to know that today we're presented by the good folks at Bet365.
Oh, yes, okay.
Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. It's never ordinary at Bet365.
For a moment, I thought like none of that had recorded. And we were just going to talk about playoff scenarios again, which I'm happy to do. But
Peaky Blinder.
We talked about against the Steelers. They ran that same exact drive concept out of empty 5 times.
Yeah.
Right? So this is not a Kenny Pickett thing. Like this is just when they have a play, they seem to like it. And what's weird to me is it's not the same play every week. Like it's not like they only have 3 plays and they keep calling the same 3 plays.
Right.
Every week they surprise us with a new play. But then they use that play in that game like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
And all the thinking about like we don't want to be easy to scout. We don't want to be predictable. It's one thing to change it up week to week, but like what's more predictable than running the same play you've been running against that team? You just ran it like 5 minutes ago, like so that I've been a little bit surprised by, a little bit disappointed by.
Like I can sort of understand that because it's not the same staple play week to week, but it does feel like by like the 3rd time should be enough. Like you spend like this is a play that's going to work again. If we know their rules in specific situations, this is a play that we know is going to beat those rules. But yeah, I mean, you show it enough in game.
If you're converting and getting success, like, who cares how you're doing it?
Yeah.
The problem is, like, I'm pointing at situations where you can see by the end of the game, and the same thing happened with the Steelers.
Yeah.
By the end of the game, they're pointing it out to
Yeah.
each other. You
Yeah.
can see pre-snap, they're all like, oh, they're doing this again, and then they do that again.
Mm-hmm.
You compare that to some other teams who do, like, have more wrinkles, and, like, you're not able to predict what they do and things like that. There was a play in this last game where Nakobe Dean is signaling screen,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's not a screen. And afterwards, he ends up, like, being like, that was my fault. Like, I was wrong. You know what I mean? Like, and with players, like, teams playing against the Eagles, it seems like they're always right, like, about what the play is. Now, when it's Kenny Pickett, I think that's even more important to not be so predictable. Because when you look at the way the Eagles succeed with Jalen Hurts, a lot of times it's out of structure. He's making like an awesome play on a scramble. Like that last play, the fourth time they were in that play, was the Kenny Pickett scramble where he got hit late and then they picked up the flag. If that's Jalen Hurts, maybe he scrambles for a first down, right? Like, because the play broke down, it was all covered perfectly, and then he had to scramble. When it's Kenny Pickett, you're not going to get explosive plays off of him scrambling. And so it's more important that the actual pass play wins. And when you look at the first Dallas game, the Eagles' pass game was not very good. They were very pass heavy, but not very good in the pass game. And most of the positive plays came from out of structure. But when you look at that game, there were like 5 sacks and 2 turnovers, and like all in the pass game. And the big plays were like scramble drill and things like that. So like, you're not going to get that with Kenny Pickett. You know what I mean? Like, so you're going to need to produce within structure. And for that, you might at some point, like, and when a team shuts down the run in the playoffs, like, what are you going to do then? So I've been a little concerned. As you know, I've been a little bit of a Kellen Moore skeptic the whole year. I don't know if it's because he's just not allowed to do everything he wants to do, but I don't think that we've gotten the creativity. I think it's safe to say we haven't gotten the creativity from Kellen Moore that we were hoping for. Would you say that's fair?
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah.
But I am less willing to put that all on Kellen Moore.
Right. Well, I added the caveat. It might be that he's not allowed to do everything he wants to do. Like, because of his past stops and his more like creative offenses elsewhere, there is reason to think it's not because of him. Who would you put it on?
I think Nick takes it. I think Nick is still very involved in the offense.
Okay.
I'm not saying that he's saying to Kellen Moore be more predictable, but I think there are a lot of reasons to think that he's still very involved there.
Okay, interesting. Kind of on this topic, Mailata was on the radio earlier this week, and he said on the Luvu interception, where there was like the flat route, and he baited it, and he came back. He said that was one of a bunch of plays where they had 6 on the line of scrimmage to stop the run, and then the 2 on the edges. It was usually Luvu and one of the other stand-up linebackers, like at the last second bailing out into zone. And he said that they hadn't seen that on film, and it kind of messed up their run game as well. And this is like, I don't know how many times we've heard this now, where like, oh, they did something we weren't ready for, and like it messed us up. Meanwhile, they're ready for everything you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, so I just think like tactically, like on the chalkboard, the Eagles have not been winning as much as they've been losing to the other coaching staff. And this should be clear from the fact that the Eagles are like almost always the more talented team. And you're not getting like the kind of dominance.
Listen, I think this is
obviously this is a very good team, 12-3.
No, but I think that's a real concern when you think about the playoffs, and
when
you're playing the best teams. There are a lot of times when the Eagles are not winning on the margins beyond the talent that you're talking about. Whether that is like specific game management stuff or schematic stuff like that. Like, I think there was reason to believe that, like, when they play the best teams and you need like all those little things are going to add up, it's hard to believe that they're going to win those little edges.
Yeah, I am concerned with that. And like, look at this game as an example. Washington hadn't used any base personnel at all in the first game. In this game, they come out, they use a bunch of base, even against 11. They had a base package that had 3 corners and 1 safety, which is creative.
Yeah,
you don't normally see that. 1 high safety, 3 corners to cover the wide receivers, but then willing to cover Grant Calcaterra with a linebacker, basically, which is not something most defenses do these days, so that they have the numbers to stop the run. And they obviously did stop the run. I mean, they bottled up the run very well throughout the game. I mean, there was like one big run in the first half.
Well, and the Eagles never threw the ball to Grant Calcaterra.
Exactly. 0 targets for Calcaterra.
Yeah.
0 targets for Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson was out there for 47 snaps and didn't get a target. And then Calcaterra never got a target either. Never got a play that was designed for him. You never got one of those like 3-level stretches that looked like it was designed for him and it was a check down. Like you didn't get any of that. No under center play action.
When you're asking about like what advantage is the coaching giving you, like I know that of course I want the ball to mostly go to A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith.
Right.
Of course. But like you can't scheme up one unpredictable thing for these other guys who are on the field, as you're saying, like 80% of the time, like just to make the defense respect it.
No, that's right. And I mean, you saw the Eagles offense just continually. I mean, like, I'm a big series conversion rate guy. Like the worst series conversion rate game the Eagles have had.
We got to work on the branding.
We got to work on the name. That's a good off-season project.
Yeah.
Got to get the whole analytics community together.
Yep.
Come up with a better name for that. So series conversion rate, the worst the Eagles have had all year was
Maybe
at Tampa.
We can hire the 33rd team or something like that. Get one of those.
Joe Banner. You think he's a big creative guy?
Yeah. Like if it's working for head coaching searches that organizations can't figure it out themselves, then maybe they can help us with the marketing.
Yeah, series it's too long, right? That's the main problem.
Yeah, and it's not
clear what it is.
It's not clear what it is. Yeah.
I remember
first down rate.
It kind of reminds me
chain rate.
You remember Rod Smart had the
he hate me
on his jersey? And do you remember what Merrill said about that?
No.
When Rod Smart was on the Eagles later, he was talking about the he hate me, how it said he hate me on the back of the jersey. And Merrill goes, not only is it grammatically incorrect, but the sentiment is unclear. And that was like fantastic. One of the great Merrill quotes. So it's kind of like that. It's like not only is it like too long and like hard to say, but it's not clear what it means. So series conversion rate is the percentage of times that you end up converting a first down when you have first down. So it's like, do you get it on first down, second down, third down, fourth down? Doesn't matter. The worst game the Eagles have had all year was in Tampa, 68%.
Mm-hmm.
And Kenny Pickett, after he came in this game, was only at 61%. So it was by far the worst the offense had been at just moving the ball consistently. Yeah. Just 14 of 23, 61%. Jalen was 6 for 6 before that. So the overall game number was a little better. And the reason is because the passing game wasn't interesting and working very well, and the running game was a disaster, and they kept on running it on early downs, getting into those third downs, and then calling the same play on every third down. Like that combination wasn't good. And obviously it's not going to be Kenny Pickett in the playoffs, but I think it's a reminder that the offense could use a little bit more the schematic advantage. The one thing Kenny Pickett did that was good, threw the ball deep and drew pass interference flags. 3 of them. How many did Jalen Hurts have coming into this game?
I know
for
the
the whole season, Jalen Hurts had drawn 1 flag that was accepted. There was one other one that got it was like offsetting penalties or something, both in the Rams game. And that's because the Eagles throw it deep less than any other team in the league. 2.6 deep passes a game is dead last in the NFL. And Hurts' deep pass percentage is like 25th or something like that. Both of those are much lower than they've been in past years, by the way.
Do you know the only team in the league that has drawn fewer defensive pass interference penalties than the Eagles?
Fewer than 4?
Fewer than 4. There's only 1.
Is it the Lions?
It is the Lions.
Yeah, and they are the second lowest deep pass percentage number. Yeah, so maybe it's overrated. Maybe the best teams are just.
We don't want your yards. We'll get them ourselves.
Okay. I don't know. I think when you have A.J. Brown and the Lions have good receivers as well. I mean, when you have A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, you should probably be throwing it deeper a little bit more often. And one of the things it does when you rely on the run so much is you are flipping a coin on late downs more. Eagles are only 13th at not needing third down. Another stat that I like a lot. Jumps up to 6th because they've been decent on late downs. The teams that fit that profile this year in the league are the Chiefs, who look like they've been doing it with smoke and mirrors all year, and the Commanders, who have been really good on late downs. But so those are good teams. But I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, we have good news. The Berman has landed.
Yes.
And so we're going to take a quick break to allow him to sidle in and get in position while you hear from our sponsors. What accent would you like to hear, Deniz?
Is this like an accent jukebox?
Yeah, why not?
I like the Italian accent.
I don't know if I'm willing to do the Italian. Let's just talk about the Rite Aid Refreshery. Let's just talk liquids. The line of beverages at the Rite Aid Refreshery ranges from familiar family favorites to revitalizing better-for-you options. It's all exclusively at Rite Aid with products that include waters, from purified waters and distilled waters and flavored waters to coconut water. Zach he cannot figure out where to sit. This is wild. There's single-serve iced tea, juice, and lemonade sweetened with real sugar with no preservatives. Juices for a crowd, of course. Pineapple, cranberry, apple, strawberry, lemonade, and many other flavors. And there's organic options available as well. Cold-pressed juices from 100% fruits and veggies, organic, non-GMO, all that good stuff. It's the Rite Aid Refreshery. You know what you're getting. You're getting refreshed. It's important to stay hydrated, especially during the summer months. Get refreshment delivered. Shop online at riteaid.com/shop for same-day delivery or buy online, pick up in store your Refreshery products. And from there, we can talk about our friends at Game Time. Day one supporters of PHLY at Game Time. Game Time, this holiday season, they're focused on togetherness. And that means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's the perfect gift. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks, the curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You get the all-in pricing. We love the all-in pricing, so you don't get surprised by those hidden fees at the end. You get to see what your seat view is going to look like before you get there. The lowest price guarantee, where if you find the same tickets for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage, where your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with code PHLY. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, he's here. I think he feels a little uncomfortable. He doesn't like to be this close to me. Zach, how you doing? Good to see you.
I'm great. Thrilled to be here. Excited to be in studio. Excited to talk about Eagles Cowboys. Huge game.
You look like a well-rested king.
I don't know about that. I am better rested. I'm hopefully on the fourth quarter of a cold here. I hope it's not the first quarter.
Yeah, my hope too, as you breathe in my direction.
You know, Bo wanted you to sit next to him, Zach. We talked about this before the show. Like, where should we have Zach sit? But he didn't know that you were sick. So
he
I
did
know, actually.
He did know.
Well,
I mean, sick
that's right. You guys saw each other this morning.
Yeah, sick's a relative term. I'm fine.
All right.
I'm fine.
Well, it's easy for you to say.
Yeah, I'm fine. But no, just got out of.
You got like 9 hours last night.
I did.
Do you think that's your high for the year?
It is, actually. I looked on my Oura ring. It is my high for the year.
Just in time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, under the wire.
Yeah. Now.
What was the previous high? 6.5?
No. I had 8 hours and 12 minutes during the summer one time. So this took the cake. It has on the app, it has a line chart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was able to easily tell the last high. So this was, I went to bed early. I did not watch any of the game last night. I did not write.
You did not miss much.
I did not write a story last night. I started transcribing and I had a brain fog, you know that feeling? And I was like, I'm probably better off going to sleep. And so I wrote this morning about Kenny Pickett.
THIS space.
Yes.
MORNING.
This morning. I see what you did there. That's my son's favorite joke where he says, "Are you smart?" And I said, "Well, don't ask Bo, but I think so, yes." And then he says, "Can you spell it?" And then the answer, of course, is IT. He loves that joke. But no, I was able to write this morning about Kenny Pickett, who, after speaking to him yesterday and speaking to the locker room yesterday, I felt like, all right, he's going to start. And then Nick Sirianni essentially confirmed that today. So it's going to be an interesting game. I'll share what Kenny Pickett said. I'm sure that's what you've been talking about the first 30 minutes of the show. But
not really, but go ahead.
A big point of emphasis from Kenny and from others that I spoke to, whether it was A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, Jordan Mailata, Cam Jurgens, Saquon Barkley, was getting the reps this week and not going into the game cold. That it is true that Kenny, as he said after the game, has never really taken reps with AJ or DeVonta. He doesn't do it in practice, didn't do it in training camp. And so he kind of goes on the fly. Now, AJ sits next to Kenny during games. He has throughout the year. I asked AJ today why he does it. He says it just kind of worked out that's where he sits, but he's able to kind of speak to the game or speak to Kenny about the game. So he has an idea of how Kenny thinks about the game.
Do you think that in the Kenny's sitting there being like, I would have thrown that ball to you, by the way? Like,
you think that's the root of the AJ?
I think that's why he sits there. He's like,
yeah, this is all sinister.
Like, man, I can't believe you didn't hit that ball, man.
Yeah, maybe so.
He came in the game and threw to him like 3 straight times.
I mean,
so.
Sure.
The proof is in the pudding there.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny knows what's
like,
up.
listen, I'll get you that ball downfield, man.
It's kind of funny because there's a storyline this week, and I'm not. Look, everyone has storylines they pursue. I'm not bashing anyone's storylines, but this.
As you're about to bash.
No. This like storyline that like they only throw to 2 guys, and you need to get the other guys involved.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, throw it to AJ and DeVonta. Like
we were just talking about this.
Yeah, like good things happen when you.
I think throwing to 2 guys is fine. I was saying I think the storyline should be have more than like 1 play a week that you use over and over again to get it to those 2 guys.
I think it's not. It can be both things.
Sure, exactly.
Let's give 3 targets that are schemed up for other guys.
Yeah.
And
like,
isn't the tight end supposed to be like the backup quarterback's best friend? Like you're supposed to have plays where you like throw it to the tight end,
but they don't really have a tight end, or they do.
Oh wow!
No, I meant they're missing their starting tight end.
I guess that Grant Calcaterra feature isn't happening.
No, I meant they don't have it. They're down their starting tight end. It wouldn't surprise me if Calcaterra is more involved this week, actually.
It can't be less involved.
Precisely. But yeah, a big point of emphasis.
Gets 1 target.
A big point, thus more involved, right? A big point of emphasis has been getting these reps in practice, being able to speak to Kellen more about plays that Kenny likes, plays that Kellen likes, and being able to merge these 2 things together. Kenny and DeVonta and AJ have had a lot of conversations this week, not just on the field, but in the cafeteria, in the hallway, in the locker room. This was a big theme today.
In the showers.
That did not come up, but if you say so, I mean, your level of reporting there.
That's because you didn't ask.
But yeah, so pay attention to the chemistry between AJ, DeVonta, and Kenny. That's one thing to watch. The offensive lineman spoke about the command that he has in the huddle, that he does speak up. Jordan Mailata said that today, that one of the adjustments they have with the backup quarterback is the cadence, is the voice, but Kenny is vocal. That's something that came up. He's not a wallflower in that regard.
Speaking of speaking up, Alshon Jeffrey, honorary captain at this game.
Yeah, I spoke to both AJ and DeVonta about Alshon today. Yeah, AJ said like he really looks up to the role that Alshon had in Philly, and he remembers watching that Super Bowl catch. He was a Patriots fan, AJ. He recalls watching it there, but just like a big time player. He spoke to AJ, or he spoke to Alshon in LA when Alshon was at the game, and he told Alshon like how much respect he has for him. DeVonta didn't know much about Alshon before he got here, but he's seen Alshon on teach tapes here. Interestingly, the play that was on a teach tape was not Alshon with the Eagles; it was Alshon with the Bears, which I found kind of interesting. It was high pointing a ball, but yeah, he thinks highly of Alshon as well.
Yeah, I think people forget that like the first game that Jalen Hurts won as an Eagle, his only touchdown pass of that game was to Alshon Jeffrey.
Yes,
like when he and Alshon were kind of talking to each other after that Rams game, my first thought was like, this is like hold on, like, and then it was like, oh yeah, of course they like were teammates, and he actually threw him a touchdown. Alshon was injured a lot of that year, so it's easy to forget that they played together. And also Jalen wasn't starting most of the year.
Exactly. Yeah, the first touchdown, as you said. So yes,
that was he threw a touchdown the week before in Green Bay, but it was the first touch. It was the first touchdown in a game that he won. Yeah, it was kind of like near pylon, kind of turned. going right to left at the lane. It was a COVID game with no fans.
That's familiar.
So
So that did come up there, but with the offensive line, the cadence is a big part of this. If you recall, after the game, I mentioned Jordan Mailata on that first down on the final 3 and out.
Yes.
There was a little miscommunication from the cadence, so that's a big point of emphasis. Cam Jurgens was speaking yesterday and essentially saying, like, yeah, I mean, he's like any backup quarterback. They have confidence in him. It's not going to be a big adjustment. Saquon was saying how, because I asked Saquon quite a bit about the effect on the running game, and Saquon said Jalen's running ability is a big part of this. But Kenny, don't underestimate his legs. Saquon brought up the fake slide that Kenny Pickett had at Pittsburgh. Although Kenny said anyone in the world knows that on those RPOs, like handing the ball to the 26 is the way to go. But he does need to be able to keep him honest.
I think we're going to see on the first 2 series of this game, there's going to be like a zone read where Kenny Pickett keeps it just to
keep
prove to the defense that he can do it.
Exactly. So those were some of the points of conversation. I mean, I know publicly, even before today, Nick was trying to play coy about this in the locker room. There's not much playing coy. God, I
don't remember this.
Mr. Sandman is in my head. Zach reminds me of Michael from The Office. As a big Office fan, I'm insulted. Mr. Jeez.
Why? He's got a good heart.
Michael? Are you kidding me? You remember Scott's Tots? Like, I was appalled by that. Yeah. He also says...
Wait till you watch the beginning of the show and hear what they were saying about my hat. So.
He says racist things. He's like, God. I mean, funny character, but I resent that characterization.
I don't know. I don't think it's that bad. All right.
Wow.
But I'm trying to. Chase Angle Plainview says that I said it was the easiest touchdown catch ever on the postgame pod, the Alshon Jeffrey catch, which I don't remember. He said it, and it was true, and it was funny. I don't remember it, but that sounds good. And Khalif also brings up that was the year that Alshon Jeffrey couldn't jump. Which I remember that play. I do remember that one play where he just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Always appreciate Alshon. I've told this story before, but he once called me over and told me, "Don't let them F with you." And I don't know if he was trying to prepare me for my future in podcasting, but I still need to heed your call.
Yeah, I'm sort of confused that as someone who loves The Office, your characterization of Michael as like the devil here.
I mean, he's
the whole arc of the show is that this goofus is actually well intentioned underneath it all.
I mean, he's like the business school episode. He doesn't know a thing about I resent that characterization. To be compared to Michael, I don't appreciate that. No.
I'm a little bewildered.
You're bewildered?
Yeah.
You think that's a compliment? If someone says you remind me of Michael Scott, that's a compliment?
Well, no, it's not that. It's not that you resent the characterization. It's just that like to treat like one episode of Michael as if that's him instead of the arc of the entire show.
K-Rod knows no one wants to be Michael Scott.
Yeah, nobody wants to be Michael Scott.
Yeah, so no, I as I said, I don't appreciate that characterization.
All right. Anyway, what else did you want to talk about on the offense, Deniz?
Just to relate things a little bit to the Dallas game, the first Dallas game, and what this Dallas game is likely to be like in blocking Parsons and all that. A couple of changes. I know Frank got into a lot of the Dallas stuff yesterday. Bunch of changes to the lineup. Both of the outside corners will be different than the first game. First game, it was the rookie, what's his name? Kalen Carson and Trayvon Diggs were both playing. Diggs had an interception in the game, and then A.J. beat Carson a couple times. It'll be Oruwariye and Deron Bland this game, so they're both different. Dallas defense has been playing a little bit better, but you pointed out correctly that a lot of the numbers are just better because of turnover luck. I mean, it's really been just like the turnover luck has been crazy. Overshown is also out. He's on IR
for a
now.
while.
Yeah.
It's more like undershown.
Like I was Overshown is such a perfect name for a Dallas Cowboys player, right? Like it's like the most overshown team in the NFL. Like, and this guy's name is literally Overshown. He's playing on like Sunday Night Football in like a terrible game.
He's a really good player.
I don't know. He's a good player, but the team is Overshown. He's on the right team is the point. Eagles did more under center that game than any other of the year. And like even had 4 under center play action passes. Fran was talking about how that was the part of the year where they were experimenting with that a little bit. The Eagles are still dead last in the NFL in under center passes. And then in terms of the way Parsons lines up and the way the Eagles handled it the first game, remember he was coming back from injury that game and he still had, a couple sacks, strip sack, all that. The Eagles are 5th highest in the league at like just leaving 5 people to protect, right? Putting everybody else out in routes. So they only 23% of the time does a 6th person stay in to protect. In that game, it was almost 50%. It was the highest it had been the entire year for the Eagles. And typically that is something you see when there's a blitzer and the running back is scanning for the blitzer and he stays in. That game, it was by design. Like the running back was staying in and helping against Micah Parsons. Like something we rarely see.
Almost always specifically for Parsons?
Almost always, yes.
Okay.
When it wasn't a blitzer, when it wasn't because you were scanning for a blitzer, it was like go over to the Parsons side, either stand behind the tackle or chip or something like that. And that's something that, like watching the film, it was very notable because like other teams do it all the time, but the Eagles just don't, right? Like it was a different thing. And it kind of reminded me of the way they talked about the way they blocked Aaron Donald and like, you're not going to let this guy beat you. Parsons still had some production in the game, but it's going to be a team effort to block him for sure. And the way he lines up, he'll mostly line up across from Mailata on early downs with Golston on the other side. And then on late pass downs, they'll typically kick Golston inside. Carl Lawson will come in and rush against Mailata. He only rushes from that side. And Parsons will either be inside as well or he'll be against Lane Johnson. So unlike the big money downs, like he'll be against Lane Johnson, or what Zach would call the money downs. We all know first down is actually the most important down. But
third down was pretty important in the game they just played. I would add
third down is best when it doesn't happen at all on offense.
But it does happen.
Yeah. Well, with this team, it does. We were talking about that before. Like they haven't been good at avoiding first down, given the talent. And then the run game in that game was like not explosive at all. They didn't really have any explosive runs. The longest run was a 13-yarder by Kenny Gainwell. And then there was a lot of garbage time running at the end, but it was a very pass-heavy approach. And like we said, the Eagles didn't really win like in the pass game schematically. They won on like some broken plays and things like that. But the reason that game was a blowout was because of the other side of the ball, which we're going to get to. I mean, that performance by the Eagles defense is still the best performance of any game all year by any defense out of 460 performances by APA per drive. So that's the reason it was a blowout.
We'll get there in a second.
Yeah.
Will this be, if Kenny Pickett hands off to Kenny Gainwell, the first time in Eagles history in which a quarterback has handed off to a running back with the same name?
I would have to look that up. My guess is no. But honestly, there's a lot of things I know about Eagles history. That is not one of them. I will defer that one to you.
Worth looking into.
I don't know if that's worth looking into, but be my guest.
Sounds like a story idea for you.
Well, he did it in the last game, so wouldn't that be the first time?
Well, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that the first time?
Right. Same name.
If I can give a little tease for after the break, I did catch up with CJ Gardner-Johnson one-on-one today. So when we talk about the defense, I'll mix that one in.
Hope it was a colorful conversation.
Yeah, it was more diplomatic. I mean, I think he was being diplomatic because he was doing that thing where he was like, it was like he was overemphasizing how rehearsed this answer was. But it was good catching up with him. And I explained to him, I said, CJ, I don't want to write about you or talk about you, I should have said, without coming to you first, without giving you a chance to explain yourself first. And see, he understood.
All right. Good tease. Let's hear about it right after this. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide. That's a lot of users. And the reason they're at Bet365 is because Bet365 live streams over 780,000 events each year, with early payout offers across the NBA, NFL, NHL, and MLB, not MLV. Major League Volleyball? No, Major League Baseball. Bet365 pioneered live in-game betting, and today they offer the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Use the code PHLY365 when you sign up, deposit $10, and place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets. Bonus bets can be used on the spread. It can be used on totals, player props, futures, and more. Bet365 is the place to go for your sports entertainment. Every day at Bet365, they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. With over 10,000 boosts every month, they boost specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays. And keep an eye out for our custom PHLY bets and boosts. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
So did you know this week in 1975, the Eagles were actually coming off a game against Washington as well. In that game, the Eagles won, but it was a bad season for the Eagles. It was the final game of a forgettable Eagles season. And a lot of people might forget that season. But you know what those people who are watching that game won't forget? That's being around their friends, enjoying the great taste of an ice cold Miller Lite. Because a lot has changed over the years. One thing that has not is the great taste of Miller Lite. Another thing that has not changed is that it's less filling. So what is the best thing about the original light beer? A Miller Lite sparked this debate in 1975, and we still have not settled it. There's the great taste. It's less filling. There's certain memories that you associate with Miller Lite, like hanging around, talking to your friends, enjoying that ice cold Miller Lite, reminiscing about the Eagles season behind you in 1975 and ahead of you here in 2024, and may I say 2025.
You may.
Miller Lite keeps it simple, undebatable quality, great taste. Only 96 calories. It's the beer that strips away everything you don't need and holds on to what matters most. A light beer that tastes like beer, less filling, and only 96 calories. The original light beer since 1975. You do not need to choose what's best. Miller Lite has great taste and is less filling. Tastes like Miller. It tastes like Miller time. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/PHLY birds, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories per 12 ounces, fewer calories and carbs than premium regular beer.
All right, so you sidle over to CJ Gardner-Johnson. You say, what the F did you say to those refs?
No. So,
and what did he say?
So I went over to CJ, and he made like a reference to how he's sick of like answering the same questions from different people. And then he's like, I scared you. And I was like, yeah, you didn't scare me. I just was coming up to talk to you. But no, he was very gracious with his time. I appreciated that. I asked him if he thinks the refs are targeting him. He says the refs are not targeting him. The refs are doing their job. He has to play by the rules. In summary, that's what he said. And it seemed like he was
saying that with an affect of this
yes,
is what I've been
like
told
this,
to say.
yes, exactly. You know, like if you're if you're asking your son to repeat like rules that you said, you know, like no whining, crying, or complaining, you know, they'll say it with effect, right? That's something.
Is that your rule in your house?
That's rule number one with my kids. No whining, crying, or complaining. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's part of being appreciative, and we don't need to get into all that.
I'm not gonna nitpick your parenting.
I actually think you would. Do you think I should allow crying or whining or complaining?
No, I don't think it is my place to talk about anyone else's parenting.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. So then I said, but isn't part of your swagger, like I'm part of what makes you your swagger? And he said, yes, but he says that this isn't swagger. He needs to listen to his coaches. He needs to not talk on the rules. Or, I'm sorry, not talk, follow the rules. And I said, part of being 12-3 is kind of the physicality, the toughness. He said swagger. I said, yeah, to use your words, swagger. He said, yeah, but your identity is what you do every day. And they've shown what their identity is. And he thinks he can still be a good player, but follow the rules. So that was kind of the messaging from him.
Yeah, I think this.
Oh, and then I should say, I asked what happened. And he said, you saw what happened. And I said, well, I didn't hear. Like, I can see if there's an altercation, but I didn't hear. And he said the ref was doing his job, that kind of thing.
It was all with De'Ami Brown, right? Because De'Ami Brown, De'Ami Brown was the one he got into it with earlier, and he like knocked off his helmet. And then he got kicked out right after De'Ami Brown lost a fumble. Yes. So I'm assuming that he just went over to De'Ami Brown and he's told him what he thought of the whole day or whatever. His family.
I imagine he said
very
it in a
colorfully
colorful
put yesterday.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if it's...
Has from the outside, and everything's relative, and this is just compared to how he was 2 years ago and before that, has he seemed a little bit more mature this year, CJ Gardner-Johnson?
I don't have enough exposure to him to really say.
That's fair.
You know, I would like to speak to him more. I don't.
Is it fair to say he has been less consistently vocal in the locker room?
Yes, I think that's fair to say.
Okay.
Yeah, that is fair to say. But I
do think that, like, when you sign CJ Gardner-Johnson and you go out and get CJ Gardner-Johnson, you do it knowing that you're going to get some penalties. Like,
and they said that.
Yeah,
like didn't Howie say that?
And I think, and I actually do think that what they're saying behind the scenes and what he said to you about, like, listen, if you want a physical defense, you're gonna like some of that's gonna come with you across the line every now and then. I think that's true, and obviously you would take the trade off. Like, let's have a top 3 defense that occasionally gets penalized. Yeah, that's
also
one of
the things he's always brought is that he gets under the skin of the opponent, and he has them flustered and possibly playing worse, but also drawing penalties on them.
Sure.
And under any kind of sane officiating in that last game, that would have been offsetting penalties. You're not allowed to knock off a guy's helmet. Like, that's a penalty. Like, if it's a penalty if you do it during the play, it's a penalty if you do it not during the play. It doesn't matter what you said to the guy.
I do think
that's offsetting penalties. Like, the officiating in this game was horrendous. So, I mean, there's also that. I mean, like, I don't think, like, in a normal game, he would have been kicked out of the game. Like,
well, even if that was offsetting, he still would have then been
I know,
kicked out
but you
of the
also
game.
wouldn't have kicked him out for just saying something after that. Like, I don't think that's
clearly.
normal.
I mean, clearly he said something that was worth the flag, I think.
I just think if
a second one, even though you know it kicks him out,
because it's so abnormal or atypical that a player is ejected for something they say.
Right, but it's also atypical.
I think it has something to do with who he is.
But the ref clearly had a view of that interaction between him and De'Ami Brown, which was not normal. Like, normally, if a guy knocks off your helmet, like right in front of the ref, that's a penalty. Like, by any kind of definition, that's a penalty. You're not allowed to do that. And he didn't call it. He pointed at CJ Gardner-Johnson as if he was like his dad or something, like teaching him a lesson. Like, he was like a complete activist referee. Like, he was not enforcing the rules.
Yeah, but my sense...
Like, I mean, as a fan, that was annoying. Like, because that's a penalty. By the way, there's another penalty in the NFL. It's called 12 men in formation. If you're in formation for 3 seconds or more, and I did indeed use a stopwatch on the film, the Eagles were in formation for 4 seconds. That's a dead ball foul. Like, I'm sorry, like, the Eagles totally messed up that play where Slay ran off and Zacchaeus was wide open, but that's a dead ball foul. That should be whistled as a dead ball foul before the play, and the only reason it wasn't is because the refs were slow to count to 12, and they didn't realize it was 12 until Slay started running off. That's reparable. Yeah. You can say after the play, like, we messed up. Like, that should have been a dead ball foul. They didn't want to do that, like, you know, with everyone celebrating the touchdown, but, like, the officiating in the game was horrendous. And, like, obviously the Eagles did a lot to lose the game, but, like...
Well, I do think that, listen, if these two teams do play again, obviously this is... The Commanders did get under the Eagles' skin in this game. They got them off their game in some ways. Even the head coach after the game, right? And so if you're thinking about how is this talented team going to lose in the first round, that is a possibility.
I just think, well, in the game against Washington, my guess is that the officials made clear to both teams that they were trying to clean things up, and that the Eagles and CJ did not adhere to said warning. That's my guess about what occurred.
No, but if he told you that today, it means he's talked to the coaches and he seems to have taken away the right lesson. That's fine.
But to your point about it being,
he has taken the lesson, we don't know.
But to your point about it being bad officiating, it could be bad officiating in an NFC Championship game. It could be bad officiating in a Super Bowl. So it's inexcusable to me to be ejected when you already have one unsportsmanlike conduct. That's your warning. It's like, you know, that's your warning. It's like playing with 4 fouls in basketball. You got to know that you got to be careful when someone's driving to the rim.
I think it was kind of the perfect storm. Like, if it's anyone other than De'Ami Brown who loses that fumble, it's probably not going to happen, right? It's like the perfect opportunity to like go to the guy who's been annoying you.
But he did it.
As to whether the Eagles have this reputation league wide, I was just looking at the penalty types. I mean, they have 6 unnecessary roughness penalties on the season. I guess 2 or 3 of them in this game. That's tied for 7th in the league. It's not outrageous. Yeah. They have 4 roughing the quarterback penalties. That's tied for 5th. It's not outrageous. But those are the only. This is a team that is penalized 15th most in the league. Those are the only penalty types in which they rank that highly. So it's a little bit of an outlier, but it's a small little thing.
And Jalen Carter is first in the league in unnecessary roughness.
Yeah, and that's fine. And you know what else though? The Eagles are
the call on him in this game was also outrageous.
The Eagles are tied for 29th, and this is one where if you really want to get what reputation stuff matters, we hear there's a holding call on every play.
Yeah.
The Eagles are tied for 29th. They've only drawn 12 offensive holding penalties.
And forget the penalty types. The Eagles have drawn fewer penalties on the opponent all season of any team. So like just all flags, period.
Right.
The Eagles have drawn something like 70 flags the whole year. And
so if you're thinking about where would the reputation matter, that is potentially one. They also have not drawn a single roughing the quarterback call all year long.
Right.
Okay.
It's a good stat.
All right, Deniz, on this defense, you talked about the first performance against the Dallas Cowboys was the single best performance by EPA per drive of any defense in a game.
It was crazy. It was five actual 3-and punts. Then there was a 3-and field goal because they got the ball at the 6-yard line and kicked the field goal. So that's kind of 6 3-and-outs. And then you have 5 turnovers.
Yep.
There were only 13 drives. I've only talked about 11 of them. And then there was
3-and field goal is going to count as a 3-and-out on the swooper thing, right?
3-and field goal does not. 4-and-out does, though. You guys were talking about that. When they kick a field goal, it doesn't count as a 3-and-out by any official.
I would consider that.
I think by the spirit of it should.
Yeah.
By the spirit of it, Fran has that one. I would count that.
Okay, you guys didn't talk about that. You guys talked about 4-and-out. If you go for it on 4th down, that does count as a 3-and-out.
And don't get it. Or
if you don't get it.
If you don't get it.
If you don't get it, it counts. A field goal typically doesn't because a 3-and-out implies there was no scoring in the drive.
I would count that.
Yeah,
you would count it even if it's a field goal.
If they get the ball and they don't get a first down on 3 and then kick it. Yeah, I would count that.
This was the question I had. Does a turnover on the opening 3 plays count as a 3-and-out?
Well, we're already.
Well, no, but
that's
that
why I had turnovers be a separate.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So you wouldn't count it double.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't count it double. According to like the 3-and-out official stats, it does not count.
Does not. Okay.
Yeah, it probably should, but yeah, True Media has it as 2 separate stats. They have 3-and punt, and then they have like drives with no first down. It's like 2 separate.
In True, I trust.
2 separate things.
You had a very self-satisfied smirk after that.
Something I wanted to ask you about, Zach. Zach Bond.
Yes.
Yesterday in the locker room, I saw
your tweet
on a video that he said he was going to have the green dot on Sunday, and when he was asked, he said it's just in case we go more dime. And the Eagles have not played more than 4 snaps of single linebacker dime all season. Mm-hmm. They only played 3 against Dallas the first time. It's very hard to imagine that that's the real reason. Nakobe Dean listed as limited with an abdomen yesterday. What was Nakobe Dean's practice status today?
So he was at practice today. Okay. We only got to watch warm-ups today, so we'll have a better idea in about an hour. But yeah, you very well could be correct there that because of Nakobe's uncertain status, they prepared Bond for it.
Right. I know when Oren Burks came in the game last week, Zach Bond got the green dot for a brief time. And the way that he said, I'm going to have it this week, I don't think he was quite prepared for the follow-up to that. It's why? It's kind of weird. Why are you having this week? So just something to keep an eye on, that Nakobe Dean might not play, or at least might be in and out, or something
I think
like
he's
that.
going to play, but I think when you're probably putting stuff in early in the week, and especially because they had a walkthrough Tuesday, they did not practice Wednesday. So right. Tuesday was a day when Nakobe was clearly recovering from something, and that was probably when they started really putting things into the game plan.
Okay.
Hey, what did you think of Oren Burks on his few snaps?
There were a couple of plays where he was good for the first time, I thought, this year. Where I actually noted that was good from Oren Burks. I'd have to check my notes to remember exactly what he did. But why do you ask?
I just thought, is he good enough?
He looked first of all, it really seemed like they don't want those guys on the field. Given the way that Zach Bond could have been this Van Ginkel style player who lines up as an edge sometimes, and you bring in. We talked about that when BG got hurt, right? Are they going to use Zach Bond more as a defensive end, steal some defensive end snaps that way, and put Oren Burks or Jeremiah Trotter out there? And from the way Fangio talked about it and the way that like he hasn't used those guys, it didn't seem like he wanted them out there.
Which also is worth bringing up because, as we talked about with Fran yesterday, the little nugget that Fangio sprinkled about the reason that they blitzed more in this game is because they were not getting enough from the 4-man pass rush.
Yes, and you asked
what do you make of that?
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit more to do with the scrambling quarterback than it was with like pure drop back passing. Is my guess. Is what he was referring to, because there were instances.
Thanks for watching on TV. Check us out on allphly.com as we finish the episode.
Ooh, did you get that in time?
I started it on time.
Okay, got it. So they just start thanks, and then it just cut off. What happens at 3? It just cuts off.
Yeah, straight to porn.
Okay.
No, that's not true.
Is it
God,
straight?
no, don't
straight.
No,
straight,
no. It's to other programming. It's to other PHLY programming. We appreciate all our Fast Channel listeners that you did not see that, or the Fast Channel viewers.
Is it straight? Is it straight back to porn? Is it like an
hour?
No. Is it like an hour of rude interruption for the viewers?
No, we have wonderful programming. We have a number of terrific shows here that you can watch on our Fast Channels on
Eagles fan porn. You know,
so it's just footage of like I don't even want to complete the sentence.
Stay far away from that one.
It's like just because I say it doesn't make it true.
He undercut since you asked me, I had to like check like what Orenbergs did that I thought was good. I
love your notes here.
He got around on a run. He got around the right tackle, and it was a run to the left. He got around the right tackle and was able to make like a backside, like force it, that like led to a 2-yard run. Best plays made all year. He hasn't been on the field that much, but it was a positive play. Yeah. So
super chat from Chase Daniel Plainview, who says, more impressive feat for Andy Reid, getting the 1 seed or having the Missouri governor reduce Britt Reid's sentence after he drunkenly hospitalized a 5-year-old. You know what? Super chat. There you go.
Speaking about Oren Burks, I'm sorry. Speaking about Zach Bond,
probably the 1 seed.
In Zach Bond's locker, he has a framed photo of the last Cowboys game. Okay, and so I asked him, "Are you looking at that this week? Is that bringing back good memories?" And he said he forgot that it was there. And then I said, "Oh, well, what comes to mind when you see that photo?"
Did he have it framed, or did someone give it to him?
Someone gave it to him.
Okay.
And because he played well in that game, I imagine he was probably a player of the game, a team player of the game. They gave him a frame photo. And he looked at it and he said, force a lot of turnovers. So just something to keep in mind.
I'll link that to something I was about to ask you anyway. One of the things Zach Bond did in that game, if I recall correctly, was he recovered a fumble.
Yes.
That was forced by Bryce Huff.
Oh,
which leads to my next question. Is there a chance we see Bryce Huff on Sunday?
Good question. I was talking about that with a few people. The Eagles have some interesting roster decisions ahead of them here.
Yes. Got to cut a bunch of guys.
Yeah, so Bryce Huff technically has one more week that if they wanted to wait and play him next week, I think we could
practice window wise.
Yes, practice window wise. I think we could see Bryce Huff. My guess is that Bryce Huff takes the Chuck Harris spot on the roster. It's worth noting when you're thinking about different roster possibilities, Britton Covey did not practice today. So he's been a full participant and he did not practice today. You wonder if that leads to an IR spot for Britton Covey.
Did you think Nick's answer about Covey earlier this week was cryptic?
It was cryptic because the way it was framed.
He'd been listed full practice.
Yeah. Well,
out for the last 2 weeks.
Because he had been listed out.
And but full practice out, which I've never seen before.
But the question was framed to him like he's been practicing, but he hasn't played. Is this based on performance? But the thing is, he's been listed out in the injury report each week. So,
but then he wouldn't just say that it was injury related that he was.
So
out.
that's why I thought the easy answer would be Nick saying, "Well, he's been injured, like he's been out for each game," and Nick kind of answered it based on almost like performance.
Right. But he was asked if it was a depth thing, and it can't be, right? Because Anias Smith is the guy dressing over him. And Anias Smith doesn't do anything. He doesn't even go in the game. So
exactly. Because like someone asked me today, how would they have...
Talk about a guy who would be good if he could, get a stub toe.
Someone asked me today how they could get Ian Book on like the 48, are you really going to sit a healthy player? And I was like, well,
Anias, play instead of Anias Smith.
Anias Smith doesn't play, so it'd be the same thing.
So, roster decision-wise, they've got this Bryce Huff thing. I think you would imagine if he comes up, it's probably Chuck Harris.
Yes.
That spot that he takes. And
Chuck Harris is getting stoned one-on-one by tight ends in the last game. I mean, he's just bringing nothing.
Some of the quietest snaps I've ever seen. I would like to see Bryce Huff this week. Because if next week is a game that doesn't matter, I mean, I would still want to see him to get ready for the playoffs, but I would like to see him in a game that matters.
I agree. So Bryce Huff, who
in the role that you expect to use him in,
And it's worth noting too that Vic Fangio said. Now I wasn't there; you were there Tuesday. Vic Fangio said that he had been playing scout team exclusively last week.
Yeah.
And so my guess, by him being a full participant in practice this week, that he's taking more of a workload. It's not just scout team work.
They also have, if they want a fullback, they would have to elevate, or they have to active or promote to the active roster Kari Blasingame. They can't have him. They can't elevate him anymore.
So that could be the Covey spot.
But if they're already elevating TDP, they're not going to elevate. Right. They're not going to they're not going to have. They'll probably just do without Blasingame, don't you think?
Probably. No, they can sign. They can't elevate him. They would have to sign him to the 53.
I know, but it's not worth it for these two games. You can elevate unlimited in the playoffs. Sure. So if you want Blasingame to be part of your playoff plans, like you don't need to put him on the 53 for these last two games. Good point. Like you can just go without him for 2 games and then bring him back for the playoffs.
Yeah, you can elevate
him an unlimited number of times in the playoffs. They changed that rule.
Yeah, that's the route I would do, and I would just use Uzama or Calcaterra in the fullback role.
No, I think probably if they need another spot, I would imagine Uzama or E.J. Jenkins is where
once Goddard is back. There's no reason to keep E.J. Jenkins, right?
Yes.
But what's the reason to keep C.J. Uzama?
Well, just because they've shown that they've shown that they prefer Uzama to E.J. Jenkins. Like, it's not like I think either one is worth having on the roster. They've both been bad, but look, I don't understand why they cut Jack Stoll when you had Nick Gates, you had Eli Ricks, like you had other guys that you easily could have cut. And I know it didn't get quite as much attention as some of the other cuts.
It's a bad one. I agree with
that.
But
like Jack Stoll was a guy that they trusted to have on the field and actually like blocked okay, as Fran was also saying this week. Like he was the best of these guys. And we're watching runs just get blown up because these guys are not. It's not that they're not physically dominant. It's that like Fran pointed it out. It's like you're clearly blocking Frankie Louvu on this play. Instead, he goes and messes up my Lada's block.
The thing is, I can't if CJ Uzama can't get that right, then what's the point? But
on the Blasingame question, I did have a question for both of you. I don't want to deviate from the defense. Did you have more?
We'll get there.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, so Blasingame, he had 1 snap last week, right? I've heard this idea that without Jalen, maybe you'll want to play more fullback. My question to you is: do you think the running game looks different this week with Kenny Pickett in there, or
than what we saw with Pickett in there last week?
Yeah, or is it functionally the same running game, or is it going to be all of the sudden, having a 2-back, having 2 backs in there, having Blasingame as a lead blocker, maybe more of a traditional run game?
I'm curious about this, and I think it would be a mistake for it to be the same staple running plays that they've been running with Jalen Hurts. Now, I'm sure that they are thinking through what are the ways that we can solve for those same plays without having a running threat. But yeah, as we talked about with Fran, like I'd like to see some 6 offensive lineman sets because they're not getting what they would like from the blocking tight ends. But I don't think they're going to all of a sudden turn this into a under center I formation running game. I think I would like to see a few different wrinkles.
Well, it's weird because when Ben Van Sumeren was playing, they would have a package of plays where he would come in and they'd run like 5 or 6 plays, basically out of I formation or I over or whatever. They did against Dallas in the first game. In the second half, there was a whole sequence of Ben Van Sumeren package plays. It was weird to me that last week, and I don't think this had to do with Kenny Pickett because the game started this way, the Eagles didn't run a single snap from under center the whole game, including when they ran duo, which they've been running from under center the whole season. And they ran duo from pistol. It was the first time all year that they've, as far as I remember, that they've run duo from pistol. They ran it 4 or 5 times. So it was an active, like something about Washington that made them. Now, they ran under center stuff against Washington the first time. So I don't know what it was, but it was a very, like the difference between the way they played Dallas the first time, which was the highest under center game of the year, including in the run game, with the Van Sumeren stuff included. And then last week when they just, for whatever reason, just didn't go under center at all, it was hard to disentangle like what they were thinking about Washington with the Kenny Pickett thing. I don't think the Kenny Pickett thing changed it because they ran duo with Jalen Hurts in the game and they ran that from pistol as well. So it's hard to say like, going into the playoffs, like how much of a focus there will be. It'll probably be opponent dependent, is my guess, right? Like,
I would think so.
And that opponent very well might be Washington. So they'll be interesting to
That's
see.
true, yeah. And also, you haven't like seen Blasingame nearly as much as we saw Van Sumeren, so they don't seem to maybe trust him quite as much as they did Van Sumeren in that role. Like they seem to really like the Van Sumeren package. Like, I don't know.
All right, what else you got on the defense?
Defense, what else do I have? We're talking about like the safeties earlier with CJGJ. Fran got into some of this as well. There were some issues with communication with passing guys off. CJGJ was at fault on one of them. Tristan McCullum was at fault on another, like on 2 of the touchdowns.
Is there a Mr. Communication?
I was trying to think about what the typical... Oh, yeah, okay. There's like a... Forget it. There's a clever answer to that joke, but I can't remember what it is. So okay.
I got a really
this is like, which makes it even like worse.
I got a really thoughtful email. It's like a 4-paragraph email. I need to respond to it from a dedicated listener who's giving me advice for dealing with Bo's jokes. And
you can take the
Bo's
Shield approach and just ignore it.
Yeah,
right?
no,
he did that for years. So.
Yeah, it was actually an approach that would require a lot of time and I imagine money. And I'm like,
money.
What?
He told me to. It was a really nice viewer, and I will respond to his email personally. He suggests that I sign up for improv classes and work on the yes and technique. And he was telling me like the advanced level improv classes, and so so I Googled yes and this.
You'd never heard of this before?
No, I knew it, but I was like, can I learn more about the technique without physically going to an improv class?
It's so funny that the only thing that's holding you back from actually following through on this advice is the money.
No, not the money. No, it's not the money. It's the time.
The time.
It's the time.
The time is clearly the thing.
I think it's more the money.
He's going to have a whole other book to write this offseason. So.
Yeah, but you don't shy away from new time commitments. From overloading your time commitments.
So I am so behind on so many things right now that I can't go to an improv class right now to improve the podcast. During the off season, I could, but I couldn't do it.
I honestly think the Shield approach of ignoring
is just ignoring. Okay,
is the time tested best way to do it. It still works for the audience, but it doesn't. It won't stay in your head as long.
Yeah,
is my guess.
I see Fran saying he really is Michael Scott. Goodness, I should never have mentioned the.
Will you see Barbie now that the Eagles have a starting quarterback named Ken?
I have nothing against Barbie. Number one.
Yeah, but now's your opportunity.
Number two, you
got another night home with no family.
Well, I won't watch it tonight, but I actually saw that it's on Netflix now. And so yeah, if my daughter wants to watch with me, I would love to watch.
You keep putting it in that box. It doesn't have to be just if your daughter wants to watch it with you.
No, but I don't sit and watch a lot of movies as it is, and so I would love to watch a movie with my daughter. And so one of her holiday presents was a Barbie T-shirt. And so we could watch it together. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There was.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, there
you
was.
Clearly want to share something.
No.
You could have gotten matching.
No,
yeah,
so this that I saw this meme on social media of it was Bill Belichick when that guy was signing on signing day, and Bill Belichick standing there in the corner, and the meme was like every dad on Christmas morning when their kids are opening up the gifts that the mother bought for them, and that meme was me when Sloan was opening up the Barbie shirt, and I was like, that is a really nice T-shirt. I'm so yeah. So I was thinking that I didn't realize that we got her a Barbie.
It's
shirt.
a team effort. Parenting.
Yes, absolutely.
You can't major in every part of parenting. I think that's okay.
Okay.
No, I mean,
I think we were talking about something else.
The safeties. I thought after Tristan McCullum came in the game, I thought Reed Blankenship started playing very differently. That's like one thing I noticed is that there were several calls of, I haven't talked to Fran about this, but like I noticed like there were several calls of cover 3 buzz, which involves Reed Blankenship coming down and covering the middle of the field. And the reason you can tell it's cover 3 buzz is because that part of the field is left wide open by the other 3 underneath defenders. They're expecting him to come down. And after McCullum came in the game, I thought there were at least 3 times where Reed was clearly supposed to buzz down, and he just kind of didn't. I wasn't sure if he like didn't trust McCullum with like the deep route on that side or whatever. Like Zach Ertz caught a wide open pass on one of them. There were a couple of other ones that weren't thrown, but Like CJGJ's had a few issues, but like for the most part, those two
Yeah.
guys have been working together really well.
Agreed.
Like it's looked beautiful. Like it looks choreographed. It looks like everyone knows what they're supposed to do. And with McCollum in the game, it just wasn't the same. So I thought that had a lot to do with some of the late game stuff. And I also thought it was interesting. I was listening to Sean Syed earlier this week. He thought it was like a.
You're gonna offend Bo.
He thought it was
Okay.
He thought it was like
I don't know
a
who that
sign
is,
that
but-
teams in the playoffs can take away from this game, that the Eagles can be attacked on the outside, which is interesting. I thought that was like a little bit like worth discussing, because we've just taken for granted that no one's going to throw at Quinyon Mitchell,
Because they just
that no
haven't
one's
thrown,
going to throw
right.
it. And we saw on the McLaurin touchdown, also on the deep one to De'Ami Brown earlier against Slay, like that the corners can get beat deep, and that teams might try it, and that it's just something to keep an eye on, because the structure that the Eagles play with, the corners are left like on islands a lot.
And I know it's on your radar as well that those guys never travel.
Never.
Why do you think
Zero
that is?
times all year that the corners have played, first of all, on opposite sides. Like Slay has 0 snaps of right cornerback this season, and Quinyon has 0 snaps of left corner. And they never travel with motion. They never travel with a receiver. Like they just never like leave their side of the field. And one of the things it does is it exposes the Eagles to certain kinds of plays. Like, so if you motion the receiver to one side and you've got all 3 wide receivers on that side and you throw a quick bubble screen to the guy who motioned,
You win. The numbers are there.
the numbers aren't there, and like the safety on that side has to come all the way down to make a play. So Washington ran a bubble screen like that in this game, and they got like 12 yards just from alignment, basically, right? Like unless somebody beats their block, that's going to be a big gain. So that's just the Fangio thing. Like, actually, that would be a good question for Fangio, I think, like to ask him about that, about his philosophy about that. In his past, he has had corners who travel. So, like, it's interesting. But I don't think he's ever had corners chase motion. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he has, at least. So that would be an interesting philosophical question, like why you don't do that. The Eagles were very bad against the flats in the first game against Washington. That was a massive improvement in this game.
Yeah.
Like, they were tackling the guy who caught the ball in the flat. Like, they weren't leaving that. But I almost think like that might have been an emphasis. And then they got beat deep instead this time. But I don't know. Those are high variance plays when they throw deep. And for the most part this year, the Eagles have been very good at causing incompletions on those deep throws.
Like to play off a Freud expression, sometimes a loss is just a loss, right? There's no deeper meaning to it. I think you look at this game against Washington, and I don't think it exposed the Eagles for the postseason in any way. I just think they lost a game with their backup quarterback, with a defense that let up a few plays. But I don't think the rest of the league or Washington unlocked something against the Eagles. I just think.
Yeah, I think the fact that it was Washington is more concerning than if it were some random team. Just because there's like a 60+% chance it's going to be Washington in the first round. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that for me at least, like I spent a little bit more. I mean, I spend a lot of time on the film every week, but I spent a little bit more time this week, like making sure I noted everything because like this is also like playoff prep right now. You know what I mean? Like it's very likely to be. And I'm sure the coaches think of it the same way. It's like they got us with this. We might have to play them in 3 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like
absolutely.
So some of the stuff Mailata was talking about, like the things they were doing with the fronts or whatever, like they have to clean that up. Like because they're not gonna, I guess Goddard's gonna be back, but like there are certain things that they're not just gonna be able to rely on.
Yeah.
Getting guys
So
back
what
and that kind of
specifically
thing.
would have you most concerned in a rematch?
Well, I think this staff has shown that they're going to commit to the run game, like even if it's not working on early downs. And so my concern is like, what if we enter a playoff game and the run game's not working because Mekhi Becton ran the wrong play or like whatever, and it happens consistently, and it's 2nd and 10, and you're still running it, and then you're still running it, and then it turns into a bunch of coin flips on 3rd down. Like that's my concern, like because that's what's happened in some of these games where the run game hasn't gone well. Now the Eagles offense hasn't had a truly terrible game all year. Like we talked about that. Even their worst game is like not like horrible by NFL standards, but in the playoffs, sometimes you're going to need, better than not terrible.
Yeah. I mean, they scored 3 touchdowns in the first quarter.
Started very good, but that was
Look, I'm not dismissing that result or poo-pooing that game by any means, but I would have confidence against Washington with a healthy Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
I would too. And it's a matter of like, it's not a matter of like they'd be likely to lose or anything like that. It's just that the downside of losing is so great that like you're worried about any little thing. Do you think Jake Elliott's going to do kickoffs, even though it's going to be 62 degrees and Braden Mann will probably be able to?
Is it going to be 62 degrees?
Yeah,
I think they're expecting rain. It's a good question. I asked Nick Sirianni on the record today, and Nick.
He said, "Good question, Zach."
And then he pledged confidence in Braden Mann.
He said good question, and then he gave a terrible answer.
Yeah, so it makes me think either one of two things: either they're going with Jake Elliott.
Either it is going to be Jake Elliott.
Either it is going to be Jake Elliott, and he didn't want to say, or that they watched Jake Elliott yesterday.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, let's go back to Braden, or let's stay with Braden Mann. I think it's one of those two. I don't think it was a good question. I just think it's something that it's a conversation they've had internally.
Special teams have been really bad this year. You know, like that game without a turnover or anything like that. It's very rare to see a number like this, but the special teams generated -7 expected points in that game against Washington. That was the second worst of the year. And when you look at EPA per game on special teams, the Eagles are 27th for the season. So it's been a very up and down experience with Michael Clay. Like when you look at his 4 years,
Vic Fangio throwing them under the bus.
What did
position.
He? Yeah, he mentioned the field position.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Didn't he say just the week before, like we don't control where the ball is?
Yes, he used that line. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. No, with Michael Clay, by the way, year to year, it's been 13th. Oh, this is in the last 4 years. 13th to 26th to 8th last year. Back down to 27th. EPA. And DVOA is kind of similar. Yeah, exactly.
And this is always Bo's point, is that you have to reinvent yourself every year on special teams.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway is that special teams is random. Like you look at the best special teams coaches.
Especially if you are investing the fewest resources in the league at that unit.
That's true.
But
it's like Chip Kelly was obsessed with it and spent resources on
Chris
Brzezinski.
I don't even think that that's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, like Chris Brzezinski and Brad Smith, and the Eagles would much rather have
Maragos.
Chris Maragos, Brian Brayman.
The
Eagles would much rather have ascending players or potentially ascending players on rookie deals in those spots than a 30-year-old special teams guy.
Right.
Which I think probably is the right way to go about it. But that means that you have to accept that there's going to be volatility with that performance. Okay. What else you guys got going on? You got a game at Connie Mack Stadium to get to, I imagine.
Man, this has been...
You look sharp.
I got to come back with the hat now.
Lean into it, man.
Yeah, I got to just lean into it now. The rest of the year.
Yeah, go with what Jalen Hurts said at the Super Bowl. When Jalen Hurts said, I make anything look good. Think about that approach. You pull it off well. Speaking of Jalen Hurts, the Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley got a holiday present, Christmas present.
How much of a red flag do you think it is that the quarterback can't get his own gift?
Well, that's actually not what happened. Because actually, from what I understand...
So did Saquon jump in?
Well, Saquon spoke to Jalen about it because Saquon and Daniel Jones had teamed up together in New York on gifts.
So it started with Daniel Jones being the Chiefs game.
So I spoke to Saquon about it. And so Saquon heard that Jalen gets gifts for the offensive lineman. And he said he went to Jalen with it. And then he said Jalen kind of had it all figured out. He said Jalen took the lead. The golf carts were Jalen's idea.
All right,
but
that's good.
Yeah, Saquon said that.
So Saquon's just riding coattails here.
Yeah, I mean, I think Saquon in the pick, because I asked Jordan Mailata, and Jordan Mailata said in his 7 years, it's never been like the running back and quarterback has been.
Well, they've never had a running back who could afford it.
So it was a joint gift because Saquon said he said he always did it with Daniel Jones, so he approached Jalen about it. The offensive linemen were excited about it. It has apparently a stereo system and a backup camera. It's a tricked out.
Yeah, and how deep do they go? They go practice squad too, right?
Yeah, which actually Jordan Mailata, I'm glad you brought that up because Jordan said today that's what he really appreciated was that
Lake and Vakalahi got one.
Well, yeah, like Lake and Vakalahi, he probably doesn't have any other way to get around. He's going to be riding that thing around the city. He's got to get to practice.
That's got to be like doubling his income for the year.
Yeah, well, he said typically like the starters get it, and then he said sometimes the backups, but. Jordan said it was really cool that the practice squad players get it because Jordan's like.
I think to be fair, I think Jalen has always done this. Like I remember Fred Johnson's first time here when he was on the practice
The
squad.
Vuitton bags.
Yeah, they all got the Louis Vuitton. And I asked him if that was like the most expensive thing he owned all of a sudden. And he said no.
Oh, wow.
He took umbrage to that.
He legitimately did take umbrage to that.
This was Fred Johnson?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
This was back when he was practice squad Fred Johnson. And nobody knew the difference.
He had played in the league
between him and
Roger.
Roger.
He had gotten paid a real NFL salary before.
Yeah, so Jordan said, we really didn't need gifts. And I was like, don't be modest. You do a lot for these guys. And then he like pointed, he's like, 65 makes X million dollars. 69 makes X million dollars. And I was like, it's not pocket watching here. It's like, it's
a lot of money for a 69.
It's a sign of gratitude toward these guys. But Jordan Mailata said that he's excited to drive this, when he has more property. Cam Jurgens is excited.
I don't understand. How are you supposed to get a golf cart from a place to another
place? How do they get it home?
How do you?
I asked Mekhi Becton that. Mekhi Becton said they're all getting shipped to their houses.
But then after that, like if you're going to use it,
so Cam Jurgens said he wants to bring this down the shore and drive it around. It is a good question. Some of these guys live in the city or they don't have a garage to store a golf cart in. But I asked Cam Jurgens if he's going to bring this to Nebraska, and he says he wants to drive it around the Philly and down the shore. Jordan Mailata, he's eventually going to have more property to drive this around in. And
they're leaving the city, huh?
What's that? I don't want to speak on Jordan Mailata's business. But
you already have.
No, I haven't. I have not.
You just said they're going to have more property.
No, if one day he does. Okay.
I miss the old days of Jordan Mailata walking his tiny dog around Rittenhouse on a regular basis, and I would actually say hi to him. It was fun. Back when he was a backup.
He's still in
backup tackle.
Yeah, he's still in the city. Jordan Mailata.
It's the swing tackle.
Yeah. So
not that kind of swing, Zach. Go ahead.
That was some reaction to the present.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
His dog is so small.
How small is he?
Yes, and
set up for a joke. Huh?
Yes, and yes.
Yes, of course. The famous teaching of yes and, where all you have to do is say yes and put the onus right back on the other person. Yes. That's of course exactly how it works.
I got a train to catch, so
yes and.
All right, what's your prediction?
I mean, I don't do predictions, as you know.
Okay.
I always think the Eagles are going to win, but I have a weird feeling that the 1 seed is going to still be in play. Going into the last. Maybe it's just hope, but
I mean, I hope that the 1 seed's in play just because I think the Saquon.
The last game would have juice.
Yeah, I want to cover, and I have a story that I've been working on that's probably going to appear next week. So,
for the record,
what's that
related to the record?
Yeah, just for it has more juice if Saquon's playing.
As you can imagine, I don't care at all about the record. But,
I know you don't, but
the 1 seed. I mean,
so this has been a volatile line. Vegas or odds makers caught on that Jalen wasn't playing, but now CeeDee Lamb's not playing. Yeah. So I think it's 7.5 with an over under of 40. In which case.
Wait, so hold on. So 7.5 over under 40. So your prediction is going to be
23-16?
23-16.
No,
I thought he changed it up a little bit to hit
24-16.
23-17. Right
I got it right. Yes. I got it right.
23-17. Right on the money. Here.
I think I know the algorithm.
The Eagles win, but don't cover.
Including the rounding at the end.
Yes, the Eagles win, but don't cover. And the over/under hits right on. Yeah, no, I actually think Kenny's gonna. I think Kenny's gonna have a decent game through the air. He's gonna feed A.J. He's gonna feed DeVonta. I think they're gonna throw.
DeVonta could use it.
I think they're gonna throw away from Bland. They're gonna throw to the other side. So whoever's on that side in the game will be the beneficiary of it. I don't think Saquon's going to have a prolific running game. He didn't last time they played Dallas. I think Dallas is going to be keying in on this. But I could see Saquon being within 70 to 90 yards, which makes next week.
Dickerson or up 2,000?
No, him rushing between 70 and 90 yards this week.
Oh,
so not getting 100 yards.
For what it's worth, Bland and
not enough.
Oruwariye were playing sides last week, and they weren't really traveling with Mike Evans. They did switch from left to right for series, but I don't know why. I couldn't really tell why. But
yeah. So, but I think they're going to trust Kenny. I think the ball's going to get out quickly. That's going to be a big point of emphasis here, and I can see a high volume game from A.J. and DeVonta.
Interesting. I think they're going to go the other way, yeah.
You think it's going to be run?
They were very pass-heavy in the first game against Dallas, but obviously that was with Jalen Hurts. But Dallas defense has been bad at run and pass, so it wasn't like an obvious, we should pass it in this game. I thought it was a little surprising how pass-heavy the first game was, but you think it'll be similar this game?
I don't think it's going to be overwhelmingly pass-heavy. I just think I think Dallas is going to threaten them to pass the ball, and I don't think the Eagles are going to shy away from passing the ball with Kenny Pickett.
All right.
I could be wrong.
We'll
No,
on Sunday.
they always want to run. I think Saquon's still going to get 20 carries. I just don't think this is going to be, unless he pulls off a long run, which he's apt to do. I don't think this is going to be 5-8, 4-7, that kind of game. I think yards might be hard to come by unless he picks them up in chunks.
Well, if anyone's looking for something to be concerned about, I'll stay on brand and give a uniform-related trivia note. The last time the Eagles lost wearing this version of the Kelly Green jersey was in the playoffs after the 1995 season in Dallas, with Randall Cunningham having to come into the game because Rodney Peete got injured.
Yeah.
Cunningham had just, I think his wife had just had a kid that week, and so he wasn't
at practice. Bring the playbook.
He didn't know any of the plays.
Yes.
And you could tell. It was one of the most ridiculous playoff games I've ever seen. I think the quarterback just literally didn't know the plays. And I don't think that would happen in modern times, but that was kind of wild. So that was the last time the Eagles wore this Kelly Green jersey and lost. So
there you go.
And they lost in 2010, but it was with the 1960 jerseys. It wasn't the same.
So they're 3-0 since bringing these back.
Yep.
Yeah. It does. I say this every time. I stay out of the jersey debates, but the images are so much better with the Kelly Green.
And the modern Kelly Green just is beautiful.
Yes, exactly.
It's so good, and they should clearly switch to it. I mean,
that's not going to happen.
Blanche in the chat says, "Lovely hat." Thank you, Blanche.
Oh, speaking of your hat, we do have a submission from a loyal viewer.
That's fantastic. That might have to be my new profile photo.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Fran Duffy.
Thanks, Fran.
Photoshop.
I can always count on you.
He photoshops too. I respect it.
You respect it. Okay. Yes, and? All right. That'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. We're back on Sunday. Full game day of coverage. Kickoff show at 12:30. Watch along throughout the game and the post-game show afterwards with Jamie Lynch, Fran Duffy, Super Bowl champion Vinny Curry, and the schlub Bo Wolf. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks to Zach for making the effort to get here today, Julia for making it all happen, and Deniz for the insight as he steps back out to sell those papers. We appreciate everybody watching and listening. We'll talk to you on Sunday. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.